There's really only a couple science fiction moments that have captivated me as intensely as this one from Denis Villeneuve's 2016 movie, Arrival. In a dark chamber aboard a spaceship, Louise Banks, a linguist played by Amy Adams, moves from the shadows to the light, a dance that's mirrored throughout the entire movie as her character slowly comes to terms with the true lessons of the film. The set, which by the way was entirely built rather than edited in post-production, was constructed with the idea of light at the forefront of its architecture.
The very design of the spaceship's interior is light reliant. Its design feature is light.
Villeneuve and the film's production designer Patrice Vermette were inspired by James Turrell's Shallow Space Constructions, a series of artworks that use light, shadow, and space to question the nature of human perception. In having the single light source of the scene come from behind the glass, from the alien realm, the darkness, and by association, the unknown, sits on the human side. The light that extends forth isn't reflected, but absorbed by the walls of the chamber, creating a gradient that extends all the way through to the entrance of the ship and allows for a space of progressive illumination to exist. In doing so, Villeneuve and the director of photography, Bradford Young, built a space that represents Louise's personal enlightenment and her evolving relationship with the understanding she has of both the heptapods and of life and death itself. In keeping her far from the glass, she remains a dark figure, but in moving closer, her lighting intensifies to the point of overexposure. Thematically, this makes sense, as the movie is as much about its narrative as it's about Louise's personal journey, with light being the mirror that connects the two. That specific concept is replicated in two other locations throughout the movie. First, in Louise's home, where the floor-to-ceiling windows open up to a hazy view and contrasts heavily against the darkness of her living room.
Mom, I'm fine.
The same visual language repeats itself again in the brutalist lecture hall Louise teaches in, this time with the whiteboard as the bright space behind her. You can notice the similarities and differences in composition and lighting between these two shots, one where Louise has no understanding of the heptapods versus one where she does. The structure of these locations not only works together, but build to make the spaceship a noticeably important space from the moment we enter it. It's as though they have a conversation with each other, reminding the audience of both where Louise came from and where she's heading. Hold on to that concept. And the journey itself is supported by the darkness that lurks in its periphery. Once on the landing site, the spaces the humans occupy often remains cloaked in darkness, making heavy use of silhouettes and negative space to not only communicate uncertainty, but also enhance the pressure on the movie's characters.
We're a world with no single leader. It's impossible to deal with just one of us.
In fact, the same can be said about the entire environment outside the spaceship. Often hazy, wet, and gray, Villeneuve pulled from Martina Hoogland-Ivanov's photography to create a sense of dread and chaos that directly opposes the tranquil nature of Louise's safe zones. In doing so, the audience realizes that the humans are the ones disturbing the peace, becoming eager to return to the safety of the ship. Of course, with a movie of this caliber, light isn't the only visual representation of Louise's journey. For example, the use of discordant colors, here orange against blue, that slowly creeps into the frame represents Louise's internal change towards a higher state of consciousness, a state that allows her to perceive time in a non-linear way. It's why the color becomes progressively more pronounced in shots where Louise is the subject and bathes most of the flash forwards. It enhances the warmth and emotional connection between her and her daughter Hannah, while signaling to the audience the progress of her character's journey. This notion is then confirmed during the sequence near the end of the film, in which Louise flashes forward to converse with the Chinese president.
Pleasure.
Bathed in orange, this scene signals the fulfillment of her purpose for the heptapods.
I will never forget what you said. You told me my wife's dying words.
But thematically, the most important pattern is undoubtedly the circle, a motif that not only emerges in the heptapod language, but permeates the entire visual identity of the film. For example, this hospital hallway from the very first minutes loops around, as does Louise and Hannah as they play. the helicopter Louise arrives in, and so on and so forth. In fact, in total, there are over 50 shots in Arrival that rotate, fast or slow, around their subjects, visualizing the influence of their past and the impact on their future in every moment. This conversation between theme and visual identity builds and builds and builds until we arrive at enlightenment. As Louise first learns from the heptapods and finally steps into the light, Arrival makes it clear that Louise's memories of her daughter and the film's opening sequence are actually events of the future. Upon using the heptapod language, Louise transcends the linear arrow of time. And just as Louise breaks free from the past, the present, and the future, so does the film, wherein the audience realizes, just like she did, that this isn't a linear experience, but a circular one, with the loop closing by the final scenes. Louise is faced with a choice at the end of the film, a choice that extends towards the audience and forces us to interrogate each moment of our daily lives.
If you could see your whole life from start to finish, would you change things?
In embracing Jeremy Renner's character Ian, Louise embraces the beauty and the joy that their future holds, as well as the sorrow, the pain, and the abandonment. It's only by watching the movie a second time that you can truly get the significance and the beauty of every moment, of the fact that through every single second of joy, Louise grieves for the inevitable loss that is to come. It's perhaps why, throughout the film, the camera isolates her, foreshadowing the awareness she'll have of the loneliness that awaits. If you look at any Villeneuve movie, you'll notice that he has an extraordinary ability to build stories around the human condition, to question our existence and the decisions we make, both on the scale of the grandiose and of the individual. In Arrival, the question we're asked is if a life is worth living despite the suffering and the pain. And although it's up for debate, Louise's response is a resounding yes.
Despite knowing the journey and where it leads, I embrace it. And I welcome every moment of it.
Hey guys, thanks for watching, and sorry if the audio was a little rough. I've been nursing a sore throat, but hopefully I'll be back on my feet in a couple of days. I guess unintentionally, this is slowly becoming a Denis Villeneuve movie analysis channel. We're closing in on having checked out all of his films. I think we're just missing Blade Runner, Dune, Incendie, Polytechnique. I think that's it. Thanks again for watching through. I'm happy you guys are here. I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time. Ciao.